Hey, this is Gary Collins, creator of the Primal Power Method, and we're back here again with Shawn Perkins with Principal Shield Financial Services. That's a little tongue twister. And this is going to be episode 3, and we're going to talk about how you choose to save for retirement in our series of the 5 ways that you lose money. Thanks a lot, Shawn, for coming on, and this is another great topic. Because it's a hot topic for everyone. Because what is it right now? 7 out of 10 Americans don't have over $2,000 or $1,000 in their savings account and have no retirement. I think that's some statistic. I may be off on that one.
It's pretty close, yeah, but you get the idea.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem, and it's coming. I mean, we're going to see it in the next 20, 25 years. You know, people are not going to have anything in retirement to live on. They're going to be solely relying on Social Security. And for someone like me and you, our age, you know, it's coming up in roughly, 15, 20 years. I'm planning for it not to be there. I mean, that's how I'm planning my retirement. I just plan not to have Social Security.
Right.
But go ahead and tell people how they lose money depending on how they choose to save for retirement.
Well, I want to first talk about a couple things that you just mentioned. Number one, I don't think there's going to be a problem with Social Security being there. I think Social Security will have to be modified in some cases, and this younger millennial generation is going to take care of that because they're not going to want to pay for you and I to sit on the couch anymore. But what will happen is they'll more than likely they'll reduce the benefits and they'll extend the retirement age. They should have done it all along. When Social Security came out, retirement age was 65 years old. That was put in place back when in 35 when President Roosevelt put that in place. The average life expectancy was about 61 years, so people weren't actually expected to live to 65. So if you did, Social Security was meant to be a supplemental retirement income. It was supposed to be in addition to what you've already done. And today, it's really not a supplemental retirement income for people. It's become more of the sole retirement income for people, whether intentionally or unintentionally. That's the way the statistics work. In fact, there's something like 75% of people going on Social Security are starting their benefits at 62, which is the earliest you can begin benefits for a typical retiree. You're supposed to wait till 65, 66, or 67, depending on where your birthday falls in the year you were born. But 75% of those going on Social Security, they're taking it at 62 years old.
Wow.
And I don't remember where I saw the statistic, but something in the neighborhood of 80% of people going on Social Security is the only income they have. Those are pretty scary things. So that was kind of an aside to kind of set some things straight. But how people choose to save for retirement. The number one way people save for retirement today is qualified plans. We referenced this or alluded to it in the last episode on how they pay their taxes. Qualified plans would be 401ks, IRAs, 457 plans, 403bs, TSPs, KIOs, things like that. And those are typically tax deferral plans. And so people like tax deferral plans because they don't have to pay the tax on the money today. It can come out of their paychecks pre-tax. They feel like they're saving taxes. The truth is they're deferring taxes.
Yeah.
I like to refer to it as postponing taxes because the tax is due. The tax man will knock on your door and expect his money at some point in the future. More than likely, it's going to be at a point in the future when you can least afford to pay it because you'll have no write-offs.
Yeah.
Right? The kids are gone, so it's just you and your wife. You have no mortgage deduction because the mantra today is to pay off your mortgage so you don't have a mortgage payment requirement. Well, now you have no write-off for that. So you'll have literally no deductions other than the standard deduction and your own personal exemption. So that means basically all of your income above $20,000 for a typical couple is going to be taxable at your highest tax bracket. That means that if rates go up, then you're going to be paying that tax back at a higher rate than what you could have paid when you could have afforded to pay it. So that's going to hurt a lot of people. And we mentioned that future tax rates are likely to go up for the reasons that I mentioned in the last episode, which is Social Security. We have the largest group of people retiring, 80 million baby boomers retiring. So they're going on Social Security and they're exhausting that system. They're going on Medicare and they're exhausting that system. And we have 2 wars that we fought and several other conflicts that we didn't raise taxes for, and they went on the credit card. So we have an $18.5 trillion debt today. We have unfunded liabilities in the way of government pensions, city and state and government pensions, all kinds of other unfunded liabilities that make the numbers quite staggering. So taxes are going to go up. And I don't think people realize that the only way for you to save taxes in a qualified plan is for you to take the money out when you're in a lower tax bracket than you were in when you put the money in the plan in the first place. So if you're in a 25% tax bracket today, you have to take the money out in a 15% tax bracket or a 20% tax bracket for you to save money.
Okay.
Well, what does that typically mean for you to be in a lower tax bracket?
You make less.
You have to make less money. Yeah. I don't know about you, but when I retire, I don't think I'm going to be able to live on less than what I have to live on today.
Well, that's a common problem. Yeah, they say that you actually, most people don't realize that when they retire, that they're not going to have the income they have before, but they'll have all this free time in which you spend more than you did before you retired. So it's like this whole kind of, you're screwed. And
what if your medical costs when you retire? What if your medical costs exceed the mortgage payment that you got rid of?
Yeah.
You haven't saved a dime. You're still in the same place. You just now, instead of having a mortgage that you can write off the interest on, you're paying that to medical premiums that you don't get to write off.
well, what would be, just, this is a side question, but what would be the amount? Because I know when I was saving up in my 401k and my TSP through the government, which I got rid of, I cleaned it out because I was scared the government would eventually just take it anyway. But that's a story for another time. But because I did the math too, and I saw what my amount was after putting in over 10 years in it. It wasn't much, and it was definitely not enough to retire off, and I had it pretty much maxed out. And I went, okay, I got another 15 years of work, and it's not going to be anywhere close for me to retire off of. So what would be that magic number? I've heard, well, you have to have at least $1 million in your 401k for you to even be able to retire comfortably. Is there a magic number by any that you know of?
Everybody's situation is unique to them.
Yeah.
Inflation will play a role, and inflation is different for everybody. So it's a couple things to consider. Is one, you're a single individual with no kids. Your lifestyle is going to cost less than mine does. I'm married and I have 2 kids, and there are other people that are married and have 3, 4, and 5 kids. Their rate of inflation or their cost of living is higher than mine. We were talking on the phone yesterday, and you told me that where you live, the gas is $2 a gallon. Where I live, it's $3.50. So there are expenses that are different for each one of us. Another thing that comes into play is what expenses could you have when you go to retire 15 or 20 years from now that you don't pay today and you couldn't actually envision paying today because they don't exist. Let me give you an example. Did you ever envision 20 years ago you'd be paying $150 a month for a cell phone plan?
Yeah, exactly.
Or you'd be paying $150 a month for 200 cable channels. Or that you'd pay $50 to watch a UFC fight, or boxing, or whatever.
Or 100 for boxing.
Exactly. Exactly. 100. Did you imagine at that time paying $15 or $20 a month to be able to stream video to your TV or your computer?
That's true.
For Netflix or whatever. What things exist today that didn't exist 30 years ago that you're paying for, and they represent a substantial amount of your budget, and what things could exist in the future that don't exist today? Those are things that you can't plan for today. So to have a magic number, it doesn't really work that way. Everybody's situation is rather unique. Another thing that comes into play with you picking the magic number is we don't know what interest rates are going to be. So if you have that magic number, if interest rates are lower than what you expect them to be, then your magic number is going to pay you less money on a monthly basis than it would be if interest rates were higher.
Yeah. Okay.
So the old days, cash was king. Everybody thought in terms of the magic number. And the truth is today, cash flow is king. What we need to have is a consistent, reliable cash flow. Cash is great to have, but it's not going to solve all your problems. Example, case in point. Somebody has $2 million in an account. What are general interest rates today on, say, a CD or a savings account? Less than 1%? You might be able to find them as high as 1.25%. Yeah. So if you have a $2 million account with a 1% interest rate, it's paying you $20,000 a year. You can't live on that.
No.
Now, fast forward to where I think rates are going in the future, and rates jump back up to maybe 5 or 6 or 10%. But at 5%, you'd be getting $100,000. That you can live on, right? So interest rate fluctuation is going to affect that magic number. The higher, the higher the magic number, the lower the interest rate you can get away with. So if you have 10 million and it's a 1% interest rate, then you're still living on 100 grand, right?
Yeah.
But the lower the amount that you have in the account, the higher the interest rate has to be to give you the income you need to survive. So there's really no easy way to pick that magic number.
Okay.
That can be applied to everybody. But we talked about tax deferred accounts. So you have to take the money out in a lower tax bracket than you were in when you put the money in to save money. And if we believe that future tax rates are going to be higher, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
And especially when you consider that the government doesn't have to just raise tax rates to affect you. The government can affect your income or your taxes by way of tax thresholds. That means each income bracket that they describe for whatever the tax brackets are, they can raise or lower the bracket, the income brackets within the actual tax rates. So if before, to qualify for a 25% tax bracket, you had to make $140,000, if they lower that tax threshold, the income threshold, to $100,000, now you're paying 25% on everything over $100,000. That's going to hurt a lot of people, and it will be unexpected, and you won't know it until you do your taxes, because they don't announce that kind of stuff on the news. They announce tax rate increases, but not thresholds. So that can blindside a lot of people. Another way they can get hurt, and we're getting into taxes when we mean to stay on the retirement bandwagon, but another way you can get hurt in taxes is elimination of deductions. They're always looking to consolidate and lower deductions, and the less deductions that you have, the more income that you're going to pay tax on.
Yeah.
So getting back into the retirement conversation we're talking about, qualified plans are tax deferral. Tax deferral can be a good thing, but it has a bite you need to know about, and most people don't know about that. You're going to pay the tax at your ordinary income tax rate when you pull it out. We talked about 59.5 at the beginning of this video. That's another thing, is they lack liquidity. Qualified plans lack liquidity. What I mean by that is if you find yourself with your back against the wall financially and you need access to your money, if it's in a savings account, you go down to the bank, you pull the money out, problem averted. If all of your money is tied up into a qualified plan, if you're younger than 59.5, there are very, very few ways you can access that money without a 10% penalty. So most people are going to fall under the 10% penalty. In 2012, I want to say, there were $57.5 billion in 10% early withdrawal penalties processed by the IRS. That's how much free money the government got for people accessing their 401k. So you had to pay $57.5 billion, America, in penalties to access your money before the government wanted you to access it. That's a pretty big penalty. So lack of liquidity means you can't get at your money when you need it, and you have to pay a penalty to get it. Well, there are ways to get at that money without the penalty, and you can borrow against some of your qualified plans. You can't borrow against an IRA, but you can borrow against a 401k. Certain other types of vehicles, 403bs and whatnot, will let you borrow, but you can generally borrow up to $50,000 or 50% of your vested balance, whichever is less. Okay. And then you have to pay it back at a rate of interest.
Yeah. Now, a
lot of people will say, yeah, but I'm paying myself back. Well, there is some truth to that statement, but you are paying the institution a fee for the money, and you're paying interest to yourself. You're paying that money back with after-tax dollars. So you referenced in the last episode that double taxation. If you're paying back the loan with after-tax dollars, and then the growth on the money that you put back in there, you have to pay tax on it when you take it out, you're getting double taxed.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of kind of boom punches in the gut that you don't expect to have happen with these plans. And I ask people, whose retirement are you saving for? Yours or the government's?
Yeah.
Because you know about all these sucker punches that are coming from all these different directions and you don't know the rules. It's usually the government's retirement that you're saving for, and you get to keep a little bit of it left.
Yeah, it's
I refer to
nickeled and dimed to death. I mean, you get a little here, get a little there, and it all adds up in the end.
So let me ask you this question: If you had $100,000 right now in a qualified plan, how much of that money is yours? What's the balance in the 401k? How much is yours? What's that?
I could get to 50,000 of it.
Well, what most people would say when I ask them that question is 100,000. I put the 100,000 in, it's my 100,000. No, you have a partner in crime, if you will. You have the IRS as your partner. All the money that you put in there, remember the tax that you didn't pay? That money's in there too. You deposited the tax that you should have paid the IRS in there as well, and the IRS is along for the ride. Their money that you owe them is growing along with your money. So that's why they let you do it. They don't mind letting you put money into your account so that you can give them a bigger chunk later. Yeah. So if you have $100,000 in that account, you want to know how much of that's yours. Think of it in terms of if you withdraw the money out of the account tomorrow, how much do you actually get in your hands? Well, take out the 10% penalty because you're now 59.5. So now your 100,000 becomes 90,000. Yep. Add the $100,000 to your W-2 income, and then pay the tax that you have to pay on the $100,000. It puts you in a new tax bracket. Now you get to keep about 50 grand, and you were right because 10% comes out the top, which is 10,000, and then you're going to owe 39.6, or you're going to owe 35, or whatever your tax rate is. You're going to get to keep 50 to 60,000 bucks. So you don't have that whole 100,000, and a lot of people think they do. Well, that's another danger.
Yeah, this is me and many friends have discussed this many times. I'm not the only one to cash out my 401k, and others have too. And we always said you get half. That's what you're going to get. You just plan on you're going to get half. And I think that's a mistake even I made. I didn't understand that it was added to my income for that year. Most people, I thought, well, I've already paid into that. That's just money that is considered separate, and it's not. It goes right into your income. So not only that, but it jacks you into the highest tax bracket usually. So you're maxing everything out, state, federal. Then you got to pay the 10% penalty on top of it. You're going to get killed. And that's the thing most people don't understand. And I have borrowed against my 401k as well. I did that early on when I bought a house when I was much younger, and I learned that lesson too because I thought, oh, I can borrow it and then I just pay it back, not realizing there was a fee and then there was a percentage that I had to pay back. I think it was 4% roughly.
They're usually very low interest rates, 3 and 4%, so they're very, very reasonable.
Very reasonable. But it was my own money.
Well, here's the thing: you borrow your money because you want to put a down payment on a house. When you take out a mortgage, the interest that you pay on the mortgage is tax deductible, correct?
Yep.
The money that you pull out of your 401k, you're paying interest on that, right? So that you can buy a house. That interest is not tax deductible.
Yep.
And in fact, you pay it back with after-tax dollars. So again, bam, another gut punch. Something else to look at that I have concerns over the way people save for retirement is we talked about liquidity. If you do borrow that money and then you wind up leaving your job voluntarily or involuntarily, whether you're terminated or you choose to leave for another job, do you know what happens to the balance in the account for that the money that you borrowed? What happens to it?
No, I've never.
If you don't pay it back within 90 days, it can become a distribution. That means it's a withdrawal, and you have to pay the tax on it. You don't get to just pay that back. You have to pay it back over time. You have to pay it back in full after 90 days if you haven't paid, when you leave your employment. That's something that most people don't know, and they find out about it going 65 miles an hour, hitting a brick wall. So that can really surprise a lot of people. A couple of the ways that people lose money with the way they save for retirement is you have no downside protection, no principal protection from loss in those accounts. So your 401k, your IRA, whatever the account is in retirement, that's in the market, right? Yeah. So number one, you have a very limited list of investment choices, and then of those investments, most of them are going to be mutual funds of some kind, and you don't have any downside protection. You can lose money. Yeah. We heard a lot of people in 2000 to 2002 that lost up to 46%, and then in 2007 to 2009 lost up to 59% of their account value. People that were on the cusp of retiring and now had to stay working for another 3 or 4 or 5 years trying to get back some of what they lost. So you have no downside protection. Add to that, how long is it going to take for you to recover when you lose 10, 20, 30, 40%? So here's something people don't often understand. If you have money in a 401k and you lost 50% of your money, what return would you have to get next year to be back to what you were before you lost the money? Most people can't answer that question. So the first answer is 50%. Well, if I lost 50, I just got to gain 50 to get back to where I'm at. I say, okay, let's do the math. What's that?
Yeah, it's more than that.
Let's do the math. You have $100,000 in a 401k. Your account loses 50%. How much do you have in the 401k? $50,000. So if you earn 50% that next year, you wouldn't be back at 100. Your 50,000 earned 50%, which is 25,000.
Yep.
You'd have $75,000, right? So you had to actually earn 100% on your 50,000 to get back to 100. So if you lose 50,
Yep.
you got to gain 100 to get back to where you were before you lost anything. So that can take a long time. We don't know if that return is going to be 100% in 1 year, or is it going to be 8% compounded over the next 8 years? But let's say it is 8% compounded over the next 8 years. Now you're back to your $100,000. But that's where you were 8 years ago.
Yeah.
8 years later, you expect to be much further along the curve, right? So we don't have the time that it takes to recover from a loss. So when you don't have downside or principal protection, you can be in a real world of hurt. Add to that, if you take your money, your everyday earnings, and put them in the stock market on your own, and the mutual funds and stocks, if you lose money, you get to write those losses off against your gains so that you don't have to pay tax on your gains. And if you don't have any gains, you simply get to write your losses off on your taxes. Now, there's a maximum that you can take, but you do get to write them off. If you lose money in your 401k and your IRA, you don't get to write that off.
Yeah.
You lose the money.
That's
so
why
sad.
You're actually making some really good points, and that's why I ended up cashing out my 401k.
Right.
It was so volatile, and I tried everything in the world to make it work, and I was switching around trying to time the market, which not smart either. But I tried everything I could, and I just thought it was a fool's game at some point. And not to say, hey, 401ks are bad. For me, not at all. For me, I couldn't see it working the way I wanted to. And my attitude was, I'm going into entrepreneurship and I'm an entrepreneur. I need that money now. I don't need it 25 years from now to drain off. My hope, and this is a gamble of being an entrepreneur, is that I can turn the money I was putting in to more money than I would have ever been able to take out.
Right.
Or I could lose it all too. That's part of life.
Sure. That's the gamble. That's the risk that we entrepreneurs take.
Yep.
And so, looking at that, we talked about provisional income in the last episode. 401k, IRA, qualified plan money counts in your provisional income, which can make your Social Security up to 85% of it taxable. Make your Medicare premiums higher. That's the other side of the provisional income thing, is that Medicare is means tested. It's not the same premium for everybody. The more money that you make, the higher your Medicare premiums are going to be. So here are ways that people lose money. And we talked about the fact that it's the opportunity cost of those lost dollars that kill you. Losing the dollars in and of themselves hurts bad enough, but losing what those dollars could have earned is a big kicker that compounds over time. Another thing in IRAs and 401ks and qualified plans that can hurt you is they have high management fees. And the problem with that is that they're high management fees, but the bigger problem and the unseen problem is that those fees are hidden. They're not currently forced to be disclosed on your statements. So when I ask the average 401k investor or typical 401k investor, how much are you paying in management fees in your 401ks? I say, oh, there's no fees. I don't pay anything. Wrong. You pay a lot of money in management fees to your IRA and your 401k and things like that, but they're not disclosed on your statements because they're taken out of your investment accounts before you ever see it. So that's changing in the coming years. The government is finally making 401k management companies, Principal Group, AG Edwards, whoever's doing it, they're making those companies begin to disclose their management fees on your statements, and you'll start to see where your money's going while you're not earning very much. So high management fees can hurt you because you're not. What are you getting management fees for? They're not giving you advice on what to invest in.
No.
You're looking at the 10 or 12 limited investment choices. You're looking at the 1, 3, 6 month, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year return histories, and you're picking that one or that one because of what it returned over the last period of time. And that's not necessarily going to tell you what the future is going to bring. Moving on to required minimum distributions. Another thing in qualified plans is required minimum distributions. If you put money in a 401k, IRA, things like that, qualified plans, you will have to take the money out when you turn 70 and a half. And there's a formula that calculates the minimum amount that you have to withdraw. The minimum amount that you have to withdraw is whether you need the money or not. It is the minimum, and it's because the government wants their taxes, and they've decided that they're going to get it at that point and no later. Now, if you don't take your required minimum distribution, the penalty is 50% of what you should have taken. So if your required minimum distribution is $25,000 for the year and you don't take it because you forgot, you didn't know, you got to pay $12,500 in a penalty.
Ooh.
If you took $20,000 and you were supposed to take $25,000, you got to pay 50% on the $5,000 that you didn't take out. You got to pay a 50% penalty on that, so it's a $2,500 gamble. That's a pretty hefty fee for a government that's looking out for you, right?
Yeah,
We set these qualified plans up to protect you so you have money for retirement, but then if you don't follow our rules, slap.
Yeah, we're going to take the money away anyway.
What's that?
I said we're going to take the money away anyway, whether you spend it or not.
Right.
You're going to get it.
It's big, and so it's what you don't know that can hurt you. Really, what you don't know that can hurt you. And I ask most people, do you know what you're investing your money in? Do you really know and understand what you're investing your money in? That's far more important than what you're investing your money in. Knowing the goods and the bads and the uglies of what you're putting your money in is very, very critical these days. And most people don't know the first thing about any of the vehicles they put their money in.
Yeah, well, and that's why I always recommend, again, that people go to a professional like yourself. And with that, can you tell people how to reach you and how to contact you?
Yeah, my blog address, because I write about a lot of these different things on my blog, is www.wiseandwealthyblog.com. My website, of course, is www.principalshield.com, with principal being spelled Principal, principalshield.com. My email address is Shawn, SHAWN, @principalshield.com. And then finally, my phone number, my mobile number is area code 619-994-1110. Now, before we sign off, one last thing, and we touched on this in the last episode, was not all qualified plans are bad. Now, I don't want anybody to think that 401ks and IRAs are bad. 401ks can be a wonderful vehicle. It just should be one of the different vehicles in your retirement plan. There's a lot of benefits to that, such as the employer match. Employer matches are wonderful. It's free money. Your employer is going to match a certain amount of your contribution. And that's free. You don't have to do anything for it but participate in the plan. You should do that. I encourage people to do that. I just encourage people to not have that be the only arrow in their quiver, because it can come back to bite you. Roth plans are very, very beneficial. Roth 401ks and Roth IRAs are very beneficial, but we talked about the limitation of a Roth IRA is that you can only contribute $5,500 per year into it. That's not going to give you enough to retire on when you retire. Roth 401ks may be able to get you there, but the problem is not many employers have Roth 401ks in their mix because it's just too much to have to manage. So I don't want to scare people away from traditional retirement vehicles. I just want them to reach out, like you said, and understand more about what their options are and about what they're actually investing in, and deciding if maybe there aren't better options available.
Yeah. Well, and with that, that's some great information. If people want to reach me, they can reach me at www.primalpowermethod.com and contact@primalpowermethod.com, and be looking out for, we've got 2 more episodes left in this series. It's a 5-part series, and but we will still be doing other financial services and talking about finances and how to better plan for your future in other future episodes. So it won't just stop there. We hope to help people in many different financial avenues if we can. But thanks again, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you for the opportunity, Gary. I appreciate it.